Mr. Jones was watching TV when the doorbell rang. It was a guy who introduced himself as Lincoln. He said that he was a member of a volunteer group. They were collecting donations to save the rarest species of dodo birds. But Mr. Jones didn't believe him and called the police. Why? There are no more dodo birds. They went extinct in the 17th century. Arwen, a rich man's only son, visited his cousin Richie. They were talking about sports and drinking tea. Suddenly, Arwen stopped breathing and fell to the floor. Richie called the doctor, who said that Arwen had been poisoned. Detective Callum arrived and started the investigation. Soon, he accused Richie of poisoning his cousin. How did Richie manage to do that? Arwen was the only one who drank his tea sweet. The poison was in the sugar. Eloise was studying in the library. She went to the bathroom and left her things on the table. When the girl returned, she realized someone had stolen her cell phone. She called the police, and they questioned the other 3 students who were in the library at that time. Bernard said, "I left the library right after Eloise. I wanted to get a drink from the vending machine. I didn't touch her things." Beth said, "I was studying the whole time and didn't even see anything." Serenity said, "I was in another part of the library and didn't come close to Eloise's table." Who stole the girl's phone? It was Bernard. He said he'd left to get a drink from the vending machine. But look, there are no drinks in there, only snacks. Samantha and her daughter Avery went to the lake to spend some time together.
Yay!
They found a nice spot and sat down there. A bit later, Samantha remembered she'd left her camera in the car and went to get it. When she returned, her daughter was gone. The woman called the police, and they started to look for the girl. There were 3 people nearby, and the police officers interrogated them all. Benjamin said, "I was walking nearby and saw a girl sitting by the lake, but I didn't do anything to her." Genevieve said she hadn't even seen the girl or her mother. And Victoria said she hadn't seen them either, but she heard someone screaming. Who should the officers arrest? They should arrest Genevieve. Look, she's wearing Avery's scarf. Brian called the police early in the morning. He said that the night before, he and his girlfriend Estelle had been watching a scary movie together. Estelle was afraid to go home, so she stayed at his place. She was having a bad dream with zombies chasing after her, and she didn't wake up in the morning. The guy didn't know what had happened, but the police arrested him, claiming he was guilty. Why? The guy said his girlfriend hadn't woke up in the morning. Then, how did he know what she had been dreaming about? Theodore came from New York to his hometown, Chicago, to spend a week with his father. 3 days later, the father called the police and said his son had poisoned himself. The police examined Theodore's things to check if there was anything suspicious. After that, they took the father to the police station for further interrogation. What seemed suspicious to them? The officers found a return ticket from Chicago to New York. Theodore wouldn't have bought this ticket if he hadn't been planning to return to New York. Esme was having her usual walk in the forest. And you know what? She got lost again. After wandering around for a couple of hours, she finally found the witch's house. Esme asked the witch to show her the way back home. The witch wanted to make Esme her maid, but she had a problem. She was planning a vacation and wanted to go fishing. Her fishing rod was 13 feet long, and one was only allowed to take things no longer than 12 feet on the train. The witch promised Esme that if the girl found a solution, she'd let her go. What can Esme recommend? Esme was very good at geometry. She advised the witch to put the rod in a 12 by 5 foot box. Diagonally, it fit perfectly. On a Sunday evening, Mrs. Collins was having tea at her friend's house. Her friend suddenly said that she had seen one of Mrs. Collins' daughters in the mall that day. Mrs. Collins got angry because all of the girls were grounded. She asked which daughter it was, but her friend couldn't tell. She wasn't wearing her glasses when she was at the mall. When Mrs. Collins returned home, she asked the girls what they had been doing the whole day. Abigail said she'd spent the day reading. Brianna said she had stayed at school after classes to study a bit more. Charlotte said that she had been practicing for her upcoming piano concert. Who lied? Brianna. It's Sunday. There's no school. A young girl, Tenley, was brought to the hospital after being poisoned. But the examination showed that Tenley hadn't eaten or drunk anything that day. Her sister, Kennedy, said she didn't know anything about the accident. Tenley's friend, Ruby, said, "We were at school when Tenley felt bad." Tenley's boyfriend, Archie, said, "I haven't even talked to her today." How was Tenley poisoned, and who did it? The girl hasn't eaten anything, but she has some lipstick on. That's what contains poison. And the only person who had access to Tenley's room that day was her sister, Kennedy. There was a car accident in a tunnel. The police suspected that one of the drivers, Owen, had fallen asleep behind the wheel. But Owen denied it. "I just couldn't see well because of the rainstorm," he said. The police didn't believe him and immediately arrested the man. Why? The accident happened in a tunnel. It couldn't rain there. Someone in the town was stealing cars. Every time a car disappeared, its owner would get a message from an anonymous number. In each message, there were 2 emojis that didn't make any sense. The police tracked the number, and the geolocation led to 3 houses. They questioned the owners, Mr. Walson, Mrs. Coleman, and Mr. Woolridge. Can you tell who the car thief is? The emojis seem to make sense after all. They're a wall and a father with a son. Combine them and you'll get Walson. So Mr. Walson must be the one stealing cars. Now let's play the game Who's Less Smart? It's early morning. Tom and Joseph are driving their teenage children to school. Who is not smart? Joseph. His son is not in the car. His father has probably forgotten about the poor guy. Annie and Emma are volunteering in an animal shelter. Annie is feeding the cats, and Emma is washing the dogs. Who is not smart here? Annie. She's giving dog food to the cats. Logan and Anthony are both having job interviews at 4 p.m. Logan is packing some food, and Anthony is ironing his best suit. Who's not smart? Anthony. Look at the clock. The interview is going to start in 5 minutes, and he's still at home. Logan is at home too, but there's still another hour till his interview begins. Noelle and Gabriella are cleaning the house. Noelle is listening to music while vacuum cleaning the living room, and Gabrielle is washing the windows. Who is not being smart? Noel. The vacuum cleaner isn't plugged in. Skylar and Autumn are both going on summer vacation. Skylar is going to Spain, and Autumn is visiting her sister in Chile. Who is not smart? Autumn. She's packing shorts and swimwear, but she won't need them because it's winter in Chile. Both Josh and Amelia didn't sleep well because their neighbor's dog had been barking all night. Amelia asked Josh to take out the trash while she was making some coffee for them. Who is not smart? Josh. Instead of the trash, he's taken out the bags with old toys they've collected to donate. Janine and Teresa are making dinner for their families. Who is not smart? Well, they both have a problem. Janine is putting out a fire with water, and Teresa has a mouse in her kitchen and an ant in the dough.
Are you up for a detective challenge? Then grab a pen and a piece of paper. Each correct answer will give you 1 point. You'll find the results at the end of the video. Aaron has just become a detective and already got his first real case. He has to work undercover at a luxurious resort. The police suspect that the hotel owners are involved in some shady deals. Aaron's first task is to sneak into the manager's office and check his documents. But the door is locked, and there's a combination lock. Aaron has to figure out the password. The young detective knows he needs to solve a math riddle, and the answer will be the code. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, 1 + 1 times 0 + 1 equals. As soon as he punches in the code, the door opens. What is the correct number? It's 30. There are no mathematical symbols at the end of the first and second lines. It means the whole thing looks like this. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 1 + 1 times 0 + 1 equals 30. Aaron manages to get into the office and look through the papers, but he doesn't find anything useful there. While the detective was busy, one guest discovered her diamond ring and earrings were missing. Someone must have stolen the jewelry. Aaron has 3 suspects: Walter, another guest, Alice, a maid, and Alan, a porter. The undercover detective decides to check their rooms. He can't spend much time there, but what he sees is enough for him to understand who the thief is. Can you figure it out? It's Alice. There's already a packed suitcase in her room. She's about to run away with the stolen jewelry. Another day, another problem. This time, someone pushed elderly Mrs. Stevenson into the swimming pool when there was no one around. But this someone didn't know the lady was once the best swimmer of her university, and she never stopped practicing. And it wasn't difficult for her to cross the swimming pool and get out of it at the other side. Aaron asked the lady if she had seen the attacker. She didn't, but she was sure it was someone who knew she'd just received a huge inheritance. The detective needed to talk to 3 people. There were Mrs. Stevenson's son, Terry, her granddaughter, Gloria, and her niece, Judy. Terry said, "These days I've been very busy. Something urgent came up at work. I don't even have time to leave my room to go to breakfast or dinner." Gloria asked Aaron to keep her secret. She was seeing a waiter she'd met at a beach cafe. If her relatives found out, they would be furious. And Judy told Aaron she'd taken a car to go shopping to the city center. Who is lying? Terry. The man looks sunburned. How can it be if he hasn't left his room for days? Aaron suspected one guest was involved in the newest criminal scheme of the hotel owners. He started to follow the man, watching his every step. At night, the detective would climb the tree growing next to the man's room and check if he was doing something fishy. One night, he saw the man tossing and turning in his bed for hours. He must be up to no good, Aaron thought. As if on cue, the man picked up the receiver, dialed some number, waited for a while, and hung up without saying a word. Soon after that, he fell asleep. What was the whole thing about? Someone was snoring loudly in the room next to his, but the phone ringing woke up the person who was snoring, and the man finally managed to fall asleep. Finally, our undercover detective seems to be on the right track. A rich businessman, Mr. Wilson, disappeared from his room. It was rumored he'd come to buy the resort from the current owners. The police questioned 4 suspects and shared this information with Aaron. The businessman's assistant said, "I felt unwell on our way here. I went to my room, and as soon as we arrived, took some medicine, and fell asleep immediately." The hotel owner said, "We agreed to meet with Mr. Wilson in a conference room, but I got lost while trying to find it. I finally came there, but Mr. Wilson never showed up." Mr. Wilson's wife, who accompanied him on his trip, said, "My husband was going to meet with the hotel owner. I'm not interested in business, so I went to the spa." Who is behind the businessman's disappearance? The hotel owner. How could he get lost in his own hotel? Ethan put a coin into an empty bottle and plugged it tightly with a cork. Then he told his friend he'd remove the coin without breaking the bottle or taking out the cork. And he did it. How? Ethan pushed the cork into the bottle and shook it to make the coin fall out. Jack was about to fail his exam. Luckily, the professor gave him one last chance. The guy had to arrange 4 nines to make them equal 100. He could use any math symbols. How did he do it? Jack figured out the correct answer pretty fast. 99 plus 9 out of 9 equals 100. Christina was dreaming of dating a rich boy from her college. After doing some research, she settled on 3 guys. All of them were nice and interested in her. But the girl needed the richest. Once she saw them having lunch together. After checking what each of them was eating, Christina made her choice. Which guy did she pick? The guy who's eating seafood and avocado. Not only are these products the most expensive, but they're also the healthiest. When do you look at number 2 and say 10? It happens when you look at your wristwatch. You're given 8 eggs. You need to break 2, cook 2, and eat 2. How many eggs will you have in the end? You can break, cook, and eat 2 eggs. It'll leave you with 6 eggs. Julia was angry with her boyfriend. She sent a message to her best friend who lived in Switzerland. In this message, the girl complained about something the guy had done, but her friend sent her a very strange reply. Give, get. Give, get. Give, get. Give, get. What did Julia's friend mean? She wanted to say that Julia should forgive and forget. You're walking through the forest. Suddenly, you see a crossroad and a man standing there. One road leads to the village where criminals live, and the other to a safe place. You don't know whether you could trust this person. You can ask him one question. If the man is a criminal, he'll lie. If he's from the safe place, he'll tell you the truth. Which question should you ask? Where is your village? If the person is innocent, he'll send you to the safe place. If he's a criminal, he'll lie and point to the safe place too. It was Mr. and Mrs. Anderson's wedding anniversary, and everyone was getting ready for the party. Mrs. Anderson wanted to put on a diamond bracelet her husband gave her for their wedding. When she opened her jewelry box, she didn't see the bracelet. Trying not to panic, the woman called her teenage daughters, Joan and Andrea. "I've told you 1,000 times not to touch my things, and still, one of you has taken my jewelry again." Joan shouted, "I haven't touched your jewelry box." Andrea also denied taking her mom's stuff. "Why would I need your bracelet? I've got lots of my own." Which girl is lying? It was Andrea who took the earrings. Mrs. Anderson didn't specify which piece of jewelry was missing. Then how did the girl know it was a bracelet? Can you figure out the answer to this rebus riddle? Mary plus Mary. The answer is summary. 1 out of 9 identical balls is heavier than the others. How can you figure out which one it is after only 2 weighings? You should divide all the balls into 3 groups and weigh 2 of them. That's how you can figure out which group contains the heavy ball. After that, you should pick 2 balls from the heaviest group, weigh one of them with the other, and you'll understand which ball of the 3 is the heaviest. And now, the best part, your results. If you got 0 to 5 points, it might be too early to try on your Sherlock's hat. Practice more, pay attention to details, and you'll get there. If your score is 5 to 10 points, you're probably ready to apply for a detective's assistant position. And then, with some more experience, you might even replace your boss one day. And if you got 11 to 15 points, you can easily open your own detective agency. You have a sharp eye for details and amazing logical skills.
Hey, meet Callum, the world's best detective. You ready for a ride-along? Let's go. It was a rainy and gloomy day, and Detective Callum was having a snack in his office. Suddenly, a woman burst in and asked for help. She said she had hung her laundry outside to dry, then gone back in the house to watch some TV. When she went back out, her favorite dress was gone. She suspected her neighbor, Jane. She was always jealous of that dress. She even wanted Jane arrested. Detective Callum wasn't impressed. He said she had just made up the whole story. How did he know? It was a rainy day. Who'd be silly enough to hang their laundry up outside? There was a speedy thief in town who ran so fast that no one could catch her. After a lucky tip-off, the police saw a woman climb in through a store window. They surrounded the store. Inside were 3 women. Detective Callum was called in to interrogate them and identify the thief. When the detective arrived, he didn't even need to ask a single question. He knew exactly who the thief was. Which one was it? It was the 3rd woman. These 2 are wearing heels. They wouldn't be able to run in those things. The 3rd woman is wearing sneakers. A downtown bank was robbed. There were 2 criminals, but police could only catch one of them, Bill. Bill refused to say who his accomplice was, but the police had already rounded up 3 suspects, Harry, George, and Ben. They called up their trusty friend, Detective Callum. The detective only needed 5 seconds to crack the case. I'll give you 7. It's Ben. Look, he has the exact same tattoo as Bill. Several women had gone missing recently, and even though it was a small town, police just couldn't catch a break. No clues for months. One day, Callum spotted the kidnapper going into a small abandoned shed. When he burst in, he found himself looking at 3 women. They all said they were locked in this small room and hadn't been out in months. But Callum knew one of them must be the kidnapper who was just pretending to be a victim. The first woman said her name was Genesis. She had been there about 8 months. The second woman, Tatum, said she had been there about 6. The third woman, Chloe, said she'd only been locked up for about 2 months. The detective knew exactly who the kidnapper was. Do you? It's Tatum. Look at her nails. She has a fresh manicure. 6 months? Yeah, right. The owner of an ice cream parlor filed a theft report. Someone stole all the money from the register. He was only gone for like 2 minutes. Detective Callum showed up 20 minutes later. There were 3 people inside. Ainsley said she had been talking on the phone with her friend. She hadn't seen anything. Rhett said he just arrived a couple of minutes ago. Joshua said he wasn't really paying attention. He didn't notice anything. So, can you figure out who's lying? Who stole the money? Rhett said he had just arrived, but his ice cream's already melted. Liar. Phoenix wanted to get her dad the best birthday present ever, but she didn't know what he wanted. She decided to break into his laptop to see what he had saved in his online shopping cart. One problem, the laptop required a password, and Phoenix didn't know it. Luckily, there was a note next to it. She sent a picture of it to her friend, Detective Callum. He solved it right away. Can you? The note doesn't make sense because it's upside down. Flip it over and you'll see a sequence of numbers 88, 89, 90, 91. The numbers before it are 86 and 87. So the password is 8687. Detective Callum traveled to a small neighboring city where young women were being kidnapped every day. 4 had already gone missing. They all lived on the same street. Their names were Ava, Bella, Celeste, and Daphne. There were only 3 women left on the street: Ava, Riley, and Georgia. Callum had to act fast. Who would be the next target? The women are getting kidnapped in alphabetical order: A, B, C, D. The next target will be Ava. Mr. Coleman's mansion was robbed while he was on vacation. He immediately called Detective Callum. Everyone who had been to the house got interrogated. Sydney, his sister, said she'd gone to the house a couple of times to find some papers on Mr. Coleman's desk. Samantha, the gardener, said she'd come every week to water the plants. Asher, the cleaner, said he'd come every Friday to clean the house. Callum found all 3 of their fingerprints on Mr. Coleman's desk. He now knew exactly who the robber was. Who? It was Samantha, the gardener. Sydney and Asher had a reason to touch the desk, but Samantha wasn't even supposed to be in Mr. Coleman's office. There aren't any plants in there. A rich woman was robbed on her private yacht during a ferocious storm. A witness said they saw Kai watching the woman right before she was robbed. Kai denied everything and said he was in his cabin at the time writing a letter to his wife. Detective Callum asked to see the letter. 5 seconds after Kai handed it to him, Detective Callum put him in handcuffs. Why? Kai said he wrote the letter during the storm. There's no way his writing could be this neat when the entire yacht was swaying around like crazy. Logan, a young businessman, was poisoned in his house. Detective Callum was on the scene. Pretty soon he had 3 suspects. Logan's girlfriend, Michaela. She said she hadn't seen him that day because she was busy at work. Next, there was his business partner, Rob. Rob said they'd had an argument and they both got pretty angry, but he hadn't poisoned Logan. The last suspect was Blair, the driver. She said she wouldn't know how to poison someone even if she wanted to. Who should Detective Callum arrest? Look, there's fresh lipstick on Logan's shirt. It matches Michaela's. But she said she hadn't seen him that day. Suspicious. Eloise found her friend Fleur poisoned in her room. She called Callum and told him she was walking past Fleur's house and noticed her light was on. She texted her, but Fleur didn't respond. She got really worried, so she broke a window, climbed in, and found her on the floor. But Detective Callum didn't believe her. He immediately arrested her for poisoning her friend. Why? Eloise said she broke a window to get in. If that was true, the broken glass should be inside the room, but it wasn't. Eloise had to cover her tracks, so she broke the glass later from the inside. A college student was robbed during a flag presentation. Detective Callum arrived to investigate the case and interrogated several suspects. Kennedy said that she was in the bathroom at the time. Gavin said he'd noticed that the Japanese flag was hanging upside down, so he'd gone over to fix it. Eleanor said that the student who was robbed was her best friend. She would never do that. Who's guilty? It's Gavin. He said that the Japanese flag was hanging upside down, but that flag looks the same either way. He's lying. Someone stole a diamond necklace at a private VIP party. The police followed the robber into a boutique store. There were 3 customers, and they didn't know who the robber was. So they called Detective Callum. Adele said she'd never even been to a VIP party. Those things are for wealthy and famous people. Joseph said he'd never even heard about the party. Florence said she'd been in the shop for the last half hour, trying to find that perfect accessory. Who should Detective Callum arrest? Adele. She's wearing a gold bracelet and earrings. Seems like she was just at a pretty fancy event. Maybe a VIP party? Detective Callum got word that some outer space species had landed on Earth. He had a special mission to spot the aliens and report the information. He walked into a cafe. Aha! I spotted one. Who did he suspect? It's that dark-haired guy. He has 6 fingers. Mr. Brown, a wealthy businessman, was robbed last night. Detective Callum arrived as soon as he could and questioned 3 of Mr. Brown's neighbors. Mrs. Jonas said she got back late last night and went straight to bed. Mr. Polson said he'd always wanted to see the ocean, so he went on vacation to Bolivia. He just got back about an hour ago. Mr. Tanner said he'd spent the whole day working in the garden and went to sleep around 8 p.m. Who did Detective Callum arrest? Mr. Polson. He said he went to Bolivia to see the ocean, but Bolivia isn't next to an ocean. Richard ran into his boss's office. Finn had just hit him in the bathroom for not helping him with his weekly sales presentation. But Finn denied it all. The boss called his golf partner, Detective Callum. He arrived, looked at Richard and Finn, and somehow knew that Richard had lied. How did he know? Richard's bruise is on the right side of his face. Finn is eating a sandwich and holding it in his right hand. He's right-handed. If Finn had really hit Richard, the bruise would be on the left side of his face.
A woman went out of the airport. She hailed a taxi and gave the directions to the driver. As soon as they drove off, the woman started to talk. Her blabbering annoyed the driver. He turned to her and said, "I can't hear what you're saying. I'm almost deaf." The woman was shocked and didn't open her mouth for the rest of the ride. Only after she got out of the taxi did she realize the man had lied to her. How did the woman understand it? If the driver had hearing problems, he wouldn't have been able to follow her directions. Detective James was invited to Long Hill College, where more and more students had their things stolen. The detective was asked to investigate these cases. In a week's time, the man had 3 suspects. "What were you doing when the last theft happened?" he asked them. Thomas said, "That day I was away. I had to take my younger sister to her rehearsals." Amanda replied, "I spent that day in the library, getting ready for my presentation." And Ryan said, "This summer, I'm going to Denmark with my parents. That's why I spend all my free time learning Dutch." Detective James immediately understood who was lying. Can you figure it out? It was Ryan. They speak Danish in Denmark. Dutch is the language of the Netherlands. Jason works in the same company as Amy, a bright and lovely girl. The guy has had a crush on Amy since they first met. To attract the girl's attention, Jason agrees to take part in the Brain Challenge game organized by their company. The first task is to crack a rebus puzzle. Jason is given a piece of paper. That's what he sees there. It doesn't take the guy long to figure out the answer. What is it? It's broken promises. Jason is one of the few who gave the correct answer. He moves to the next level. He finds himself in a room full of random stuff. There, he needs to find an object that would be the answer to the following question. What goes up when the rain goes down? Look around and help Jason find the needed object. The guy chose a red and white umbrella, and that was the right answer. His next challenge was to get out of a basement. There are no windows there. Jason sees just one door with a letter combination lock. The only thing that can probably give him some hint is a note he finds in the farthest corner. P plus 3, N minus 1, B minus 1, N plus 4, S plus 1. What's the code word? Jason needed more time to crack this riddle, but he managed to get out of the basement. The code word was SMART. The key to this riddle was hidden in the alphabet. P plus 3 following letters is S. N minus 1 letter is M, and so on. Jason is amazed to find out he's one of the 2 contestants to make it to the finals. Now, he has to do his best to win. The guy comes up to the table with 3 cups on it, but only one of these drinks is safe to try. The other 2 are poisoned. And even though a mistake won't cost Jason his life, the consequences will be unpleasant. The drinks are tea with sugar, cappuccino, and hot chocolate. Which one should Jason choose? If it was indeed sugar in the tea, it would have melted completely. But it didn't happen. Cappuccino looks suspiciously green. It's probably unsafe to drink. Jason opted for the hot chocolate and won the challenge. Now, Amy will definitely notice him. 3 people are hiding in bathroom stalls. Try to figure out who's a pregnant woman. It's the one wearing the untied sneakers. It's often difficult for pregnant women to bend over to lace up their footwear. 2 people were born at the same moment, but they don't celebrate their birthdays on the same day. How is it possible? They were born in different time zones. In one of these zones, it was already the next day. Detective Brown was having dinner in his kitchen. Suddenly, he heard screams coming from his neighbor's house. He rushed there. The door was open. When he ran inside, he saw a paramedic bending over a lying man. Once the doctor saw the detective, he exclaimed, "He fell down the stairs. Luckily, he's just unconscious. I need to take him to the hospital." Detective Brown didn't need to think twice. He called the ambulance and arrested the man on the spot. Why? When the detective was running towards the neighbor's house, he didn't see any car outside. Then how did the paramedic get there? And how did he know his help was needed? You don't have them when you're born, but you get them later. In several years, you don't have them anymore. But then they come again, but in a different form. Many years later, they might leave you again. What are they? They are your teeth. A criminal appeared in a small town, and 2 young women went missing. Right now, the third girl is being taken away. When she comes to her senses, she finds herself in a well with 2 other girls. The well isn't particularly deep, so they decide to try to get out of it. The shortest and slimmest of them climbs on top of the other 2, but she can't reach the edge of the well. What can the girls do to get out of there? The tallest of the girls should climb on top. She has the longer arms and will easily reach the edge of the well. You get lost in the woods in the middle of the winter. Suddenly, you see a cabin. It's dark and cold inside. There is just 1 candle on the table and a wood-burning stove in the corner. You pull out your matchbox and see there's only 1 match left. What should you light first? The match, of course. It was winter when an elderly couple finished building a pretty new house. The husband was responsible for the construction, while his wife was a self-appointed decorator. The house looked beautiful. Very proud, they invited their teenage grandchildren to have a look at their work. But within an hour, 1 guy and 2 girls managed to break several windows. They also knocked down the fence, removed the decorations, and ruined the roof. But the most bizarre thing, the retired couple didn't seem to mind. They just smiled looking at the teenagers. Can you figure out what was going on? The grandparents made a gingerbread house and invited their grandchildren to eat it. 5 costs $25 and 25 $50. If you buy 2 $55, you'll pay $75. What is it that you buy and how much does one item cost? You're buying door numbers, and one of them costs $25. On a rainy Monday morning, a car hit a woman at the crosswalk and sped away without stopping. Luckily, the woman wasn't badly hurt. She even managed to describe the vehicle before being taken to a hospital. It was a green van. The accident happened in a small town. That's why the police figured out easily that there were just 3 cars like that. They found and questioned all the car owners. Gary said, "My sister took part in a concert in another town. I gave her a lift and waited for the show to finish to drive her back." Angela explained to the police she'd been busy with some household chores, gardening, washing her van, and the like. Larry answered he was ill. That's why he spent the whole day in bed drinking hot tea. The police officers understood who was lying right away. Who was it? It was a rainy day. Washing a car and gardening when it's raining? Not the best idea. Angela must be lying. A man was in an 8-story building when a fire started. He jumped out the window but didn't even bruise himself. How is it possible? The man jumped out of the first-floor window. 2 people are standing near the river. Both of them want to get to the opposite side, but the boat can carry only one of them. It's summer, and the river isn't frozen. And still, they manage to get to the other bank. How? They are on opposite sides of the river. One town had a weird law. All the men leaving there had to be clean-shaven. but no man was allowed to shave himself. The only person in the town who was licensed to shave them was a 40-year-old barber. But then, who shaved the barber? There was no need. The barber was a woman. A mother promised her son to pay him $60 per hour if he washed his hands for 6 seconds before eating a meal. The son did that, and his mom gave him his well-earned money. But the boy got upset. Why? Because he received just 10 cents.
So Dave had to sneak into his mom's computer to delete some emails he accidentally sent her. His mom had a bad memory, so she always had notes with her passcodes. Luckily, the note was right there again, saying 9868. Dave entered the passcode, but it was wrong. Why? And what's the actual passcode? The note was just turned upside down. The actual passcode is 8986. Stephanie came home after a long day at work. She was very excited to finally eat her favorite chocolate she had been dreaming about all day. But the chocolate was gone. Stephanie interrogated each of her family members. Her husband said, "I just got home from work too and haven't eaten anything all day." Her daughter Della said, "I was studying all day and didn't eat anything too." Della's twin brother Arnie said, "It wasn't me." Who ate the chocolate? Take a closer look at Della's desk. There's a chocolate wrapper, but she said she didn't eat anything. She must have lied. A grocery store manager noticed that recently they started to lose watermelons. He suggested that there's a watermelon thief coming at the store from time to time. He opened one of the security videos and could immediately tell who the thief was. Look at the picture and try to guess who is the culprit. Look at the guy in the middle. He has a ball in his hands, but he's holding it like it's very heavy. Usually, balls aren't heavy, so it must be a watermelon. Tom and Mark came to the job audition. The company doesn't want to hire parents because they need full commitment. Both men said that they're not parents, but one of them is lying. Can you tell who? It's Mark. Take a closer look at his hand. There's a pink scrunchie on it. He must have done his daughter's hair before the audition. Mrs. Smith invited her neighbors over for a fancy dinner. She used her best tea set and silver cutlery and cooked a great meal. However, during the dinner, she realized that one of her neighbors is a vampire. Who is the vampire, and how did she understand it? The vampire is the one who brought his own plastic spoon and is eating with it instead of with Mrs. Smith's silver cutlery. That's because vampires are afraid of silver. Four friends met after the summer break and talked about how their summer went. Toby was bragging about the months he spent in Chile and how hot it was there. However, his friends didn't believe him and called him a liar. Why? Chile is located in the southern hemisphere. During the summertime, it's winter there. Toby said it was hot, which can't be true. Three friends, Blair, Chloe, and Nell, were walking all day around town. They found a beautiful but dusty house where no one lived. They entered it and started to take pictures. In the evening, they were scrolling through the pictures and one of them made a scream. Take a look at the photos and say which one scared them and why. It's the first picture. There was no one in the house except for the girls, but on that picture, they're all three of them together, snapped from behind. Michelle was having a birthday party. She noticed her brother was eating in his room with some girl. However, she didn't know who it was. She got very curious, so after they left, she sneaked into his room to find some hints. There were 3 girls at her party: Jasmine, Sydney, and Nicole. Michelle immediately guessed who her brother was dating. Can you? Her brother was dating Jasmine. Look at the dishes and the cutlery. There's a lipstick stain on the fork. Jasmine is the only one wearing lipstick. Pamela is a lawyer and Samantha is a journalist. Can you guess which one of these women is a mother? Take a look at the background. On the wall behind Samantha, there's some colorful marker scribbles. She must be a mother. Gianna was getting ready for her date. Suddenly, the lights in her apartment went off. She was almost ready and only needed her gloves. It was dark and she couldn't find a fitted pair. She only had gloves of 2 colors, brown and black. She was already late, so she decided to leave, taking several gloves with her. How many gloves should she take with her to be sure there's a pair of the same color? She just needs 3. Even if the first 2 are of a different color, the third one will either be black or brown, matching the other one. A police officer was following a robber around the city. Suddenly, the robber entered the hospital and disappeared. When the police officer entered the building, there were 3 workers. One of them must be a robber who dressed up to pretend to be a doctor. Can you tell who? It's the man in the middle. Look at his badge. There's a picture of a woman on it. He must have worn the first pair of clothes he noticed. It was Christmas morning and the whole family was home. When Bailey returned in her room after watching her show on TV, she found that someone stole all the presents she had been wrapping. She questioned every person in the house. Her mom said that she had been making dinner. Her dad said he had been mowing the lawn. Her brother said he had been playing video games in his room. Who stole the presents? It was Bailey's dad. It's winter, and we could see that it's snowing outside. He just couldn't mow the lawn. In the Arts Museum, the lights went off for a couple of minutes. When they came back on, the most expensive painting was missing. The detective arrived and started the investigation. There were 3 suspects, and he questioned each of them. Jessica, a dance teacher, said that she had been so scared when the lights went off that she couldn't even move and for sure didn't touch anything. Derek, a journalist, said he'd been in the bathroom at the time. Collins, an engineer, said he had been in a different room of the museum, watching the dinosaur fossil. Who's lying? It's Collins. It's an art museum. There are no dinosaur exhibitions. Can you tell who's not a real werewolf? It's actually the guy who looks like a werewolf. Werewolves only turn into wolves during the time of the full moon and at night. It's daytime now, so the guy must be just wearing a costume. Esme was having a walk in the forest. After the dawn, she tried to find her way back home, but got lost. Finally, she came across a witch's house and asked her to take her home. The witch agreed to help her, but only if Esme solved her riddle. If not, she'd have to stay with the witch forever. The witch took an apple, tied a string to it, and held it. She asked Esme to cut the string in half so that the apple didn't fall down. However, Esme couldn't touch the apple or hold it. How could she do it? Esme should tie a knot in the middle of the string, make it into a loop, and then cut the apple. The time police have found out that there's a time traveler who uses the time machine more often than allowed. They tracked him and followed him to the Stone Age. Can you guess who's the time traveler? It's this guy who's wearing sneakers. Sneakers in the Stone Age? Really? Mr. Brown was robbed in the street. The culprit hit him on the right side of his head and ran away with his wallet. Mr. Brown didn't see who it was, but he noticed that the person entered a nearby hospital. When he entered, there were 3 people sitting there. Take a close look at them and tell who was the culprit. Mr. Brown was hit on the right side of his face. This means that the robber is left-handed. Look at where the bags stand next to those people. The first woman has her purse on the left side of her, which means it must have been her. For her birthday, Sienna got a beautiful hairpin. She brought it to school and showed it to her friends during lunch. Then she left for the bathroom, and when she returned, the hairpin was gone. Take a look at the pictures before and after, and tell which of her friends stole it. Look at the glass of juice of the red-haired girl. It looks like there's more juice on the later picture. No, there's not. She just put a hairpin in the glass. Mr. Green got in a car accident and spent a month in the hospital. He got amnesia and partially forgot things. He didn't have any family, and after a month, he finally returned home. He found his street, but then he realized he didn't remember which of the 2 houses was actually his. Can you guess which one it was? His house is the one where the snow is unshoveled. He spent a month in the hospital and lives alone, so no one could clean the driveway. Look at the Christmas photos of 2 families. Can you tell which family is poor? The poor family is the second one. Even though the son has a big present, the parents don't have any presents at all. They probably couldn't afford to buy presents for themselves.